From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on Ag Day, don't like leftovers? A new way to recycle food scraps.
It just works exactly like a stomach.
We dive into the numbers when it comes to farm bankruptcies. How bad are they?
This year, there's a good chance that we may even have a worse year as far as net profits are concerned.
Agriculture isn't seeing an alarming rise in Chapter 12 bankruptcies. The Ohio State University has fresh analysis on why. We'll have that today on Ag Day.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. We've heard a lot about farm bankruptcies, some experts saying they are on the rise. But a new study says it may not be as bad as believed. Tyne Morgan takes a closer look in this exclusive report.
Thanks, Clinton. Well, earlier this year, Wall Street Journal released a story about how there's a wave of farm bankruptcies taking over agriculture right now. And while standing here in Kansas, they're definitely seeing an elevated level of Chapter 12 bankruptcy filings. It's not a situation consuming agriculture everywhere. Ag lender Farmer Mac just issued its spring edition of the feed, and one section, guest authored by economists at the Ohio State University, really dug into the number of farm bankruptcies happening right now.
And one of the things they found digging through all the U.S. court Chapter 12 bankruptcy filings is that, yes, all those news stories are true. The number of bankruptcies is up in 2018, but it's not an alarming increase.
Robert Dinnerman is an economist who co-researched the trends in farm bankruptcies.
Since 2005, we're kind of at a range that, on average, we probably see around 450 to 500 bankruptcies filed for farmers each year.
Dinnerman says the U.S. saw 498 Chapter 12 bankruptcy filings in 2018 and 498 in 2017. That's right in line with average and well below the uptick Ag saw in 2011. So why isn't agriculture seeing ballooning bankruptcies overall? Dinnerman says one reason is debt-to-asset ratios are rising, but not to the level producers saw in the 1980s. Another major factor preventing more filings, land values remain strong.
We're not seeing a large decline in farmland values across the United States. There are particular regions in the U.S. where we have seen declines in farmland values, and where we do see farmland values declining, that's where we also see a little bit of spikes in bankruptcies as well.
Takish says the tariff aid payments were also a Band-Aid for some bleeding balance sheets.
A lot of folks maybe who were cash strapped were able to tap into the market facilitation program that the USDA put out in late 2018. So that probably was able to save a few more people if they were cash strapped and they were facing January 1 payments on their debt.
Now, this map from American Farm Bureau visually shows you which states are seeing Chapter 12 filings increase the most, which include Wisconsin, Minnesota, South and North Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. Dinnerman says while some states are seeing Chapter 12 bankruptcy filings rise, it's nowhere near levels producers saw in the 1980s.
We're not seeing anything that is historically anywhere close to massive stress in the farming industry. Back in the 80s, whenever Chapter 12 became a code, an available option for farmers, we saw roughly 7 to 10 farmers per 10,000 farms filing for Chapter 12. What we saw the past 2 years is something closer to 2.5 farmers. So any notion of it being a historical issue, we're nowhere close to that. Certainly it's not great, but we're probably at some sort of an average.
Well, it's also key to remember that Chapter 12 filings are actually to help producers restructure debt. So when you gauge the health of the farm economy right now, you can't just look at Chapter 12 bankruptcies. The Ohio State University says you also have to look at trends in commodity prices as well as land values. Reporting from Kansas, I'm Tyne Morgan for Ag Day.
All right, thanks, Tyne. While farm bankruptcies remain relatively low in Iowa, some financial data raises concerns. The Des Moines Register reporting some Iowa farmers are selling parcels of land to generate revenue so they can keep going this year. It says it's due to continued low commodity prices, saying dozens of farmers may be unable to get bank financing for spring planting. One economist saying this has been happening for years.
When you think about what some of the ag lenders have started to do, they tried to be for a number of years. They tried to be cash flow lenders rather than equity lenders. And with some of the difficult prices, we've seen some of those ag lenders going back to being equity lenders again.
There's a lot of farmers that, especially farmers that might be highly leveraged, are having some real issues because the prices Last year they barely broke even, if they broke even. This year there's a good chance that we may even have a worse year as far as net profits are concerned.
The Chicago Federal Reserve said in February nearly 3% of Iowa farm borrowers will be unable to get renewed financing. That number is based on a survey of lenders. The battle between the EU and U.S. starting years ago over subsidies given to U.S. plane maker Boeing and rival Airbus escalating Wednesday. The EU firing back with proposed tariffs of its own on U.S. imports. Reuters reporting a new list of possible tariff items on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods. Items include planes, tractors, and frozen fish. The 28-nation group announced this week it would be opening trade negotiations with the U.S. Top trade officials from the U.S. and Japan renewing their hope for striking a bilateral trade agreement focused mainly on goods and some services. It comes at the end of 2 days of talks this week. The U.S. Trade Representative issuing a statement saying the two sides discussed trade issues involving goods, including agriculture, as well as the need to establish high standards in the area of digital trade, both pledging to accelerate talks between the two nations. Now, the National Pork Producers Federation saying Japan is a big market, a country which needs to have an agreement with the United States.
The U.S. is the largest, most efficient supplier of high-quality pork. From a competitive standpoint, we can compete with anybody as long as we don't have government standing in our way, and that's why we need access.
The United States is no longer a part of the updated Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Dirk says the U.S. pork now has a tariff disadvantage with competitor countries because of it. The U.S. trade deficit fell for the second straight month in February as a deficit in trade with China narrowed. The Commerce Department saying the gap between the goods and services that the U.S. sells and what it buys from the rest of the world dropped 3.4% to $49.4 billion in February. That's the lowest since June. The deficit with China dropped 28.2% to $24.8 billion. Now, exports to China rose 18.2% to $8.4 billion. Imports from China fell 20.2% to $33.2 billion. It's always interesting to see farming in other parts of the world, as meteorologist Cindy Clausen shows us. Today's crop comments. Cindy.
Well, Clinton, we love to get in pictures and videos from all around the world, and this one was shared with us on Twitter from Ireland. Kylie Magner is a poultry farmer in Tipperary. Just look at those hens go, going so fast their little legs can hardly keep up. She says they were very excited to get out to a grassy area on this day, saying there's lots of nutrition out there for them. Let's take a look at our wind speed forecast as we head through the day today, and we'll have some pockets of windy conditions over into the Great Lakes area, also through a good portion of the plains. And as we put this into motion and you see what's going on through the day, you can really see those winds picking up, especially in the central and into the southern plains. Heading through your tonight forecast and into your Friday morning, we're going to be seeing those winds kind of subsiding a little bit, but really focusing on the eastern part of the country. And through the day on Friday, we'll see those winds, especially in parts of the Corn Belt. You can see those winds also starting to pick up in parts of the northern plains. We'll have more in your forecast coming up, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
The next few days are pretty big for eggs, with egg hunts and Easter coming up on Sunday. And there's good news if you're buying eggs. Usually a week or so before Easter, there's a big bump in prices, but not this time. In fact, one USDA economist saying prices are down 8% year over year.
Prices are down dramatically. This year we have a lot of eggs available.
Analysts say production is running 3.5% higher than a year ago. Retail experts are forecasting egg prices to decrease 1 to 2% this year after last year's 11% hike. With 6% of the winter wheat now headed, farmers are watching markets as crops mature. Up next, we'll talk wheat and global influences at the Agribusiness Desk. And later, finding value in leftovers, the fight against food waste in the country. Ken Smith-Meyer with Clipper Data, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk. And Ken, for the wheat growers out there, a lot of competition generally from Russia, the Ukraine. What do we know about the way that the global wheat market is starting to move and shift?
Yeah, well, I think you can expect that the dominance from the Black Sea is going to continue. I mean, they're growing acreage, their yields are up, their production's up. So I don't think that's going anywhere unless there is a weather problem. You know, U.S. wheat shipments have been up here recently, and that's because of a slowdown in the Black Sea region. But I think that we need to be careful about how long that lasts. New crop is going to be starting June, July in that region of the world. And so you might see an aggressive export stance from those players over there. But for the time being, wheat has been in a good position to gain share. But we'll see what things look like whenever there's more competition over in Russia and Ukraine come June, July.
Yeah. Do you think that plays into this spring planted and wheat acreage here in the U.S.? And I mean, is there going to be enough incentive to drive acres here at home?
No, I don't, because I do think it's a short-term thing. I mean, the U.S. will always export wheat, but we are in this kind of hole here where we're just able to be in the position to do more than what we have last year or the year before because there's less somewhere else. You know, if you have great crops in Russia, Ukraine, Australia, Argentina, you know, the U.S. is in a tough position. Then you can get into things like the trade deal with TPP and the advantages that the Australians might have for the Japanese markets. That can be a real headwind. So I think there are some hurdles here, but for the time being, we're happy with the trend here at the moment.
Did Russia run out of wheat or not? Because there's a lot of questions around that this year.
Contrary to popular opinion, they did not run out of wheat yet, but their loadouts have slowed. I think we need to keep an eye on weather. It's been pretty dry in Romania. They did pick up a little bit of moisture here recently. And so we are going to have to watch that area of the world. But yeah, they should be back.
All right. Well, I appreciate the insight. Thank you so much. We'll be back with more Ag Day here in just a minute.
For more information about Clipper Data and its services, contact Grains at clipperdata.com. Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Cindy Clausen, and looking at the weather here, Cindy, looks like some places could see strong storms again today.
Yeah, it's really just been kind of a rough couple of days down, especially in the Gulf Coast states today as we see that cold front moving to the east. Let's take a look. And the real focus today as far as real heavy rain and the potential for some severe weather is going to be right here in parts of the western and central Gulf Coast states. This cold front continues to push to the north, but we'll see a chance for some heavier rain even on the northern sides of this front as well. Let's put this into motion. You can see how everything is progressing through the day, but the heaviest, strongest stuff right here in the central Gulf Coast, right along that secondary low. The main low on the parent cold front, we're going to be seeing that moving into the northeast, so some snow mainly in Canada. It'll be close though, and some showers and thunderstorms all along this front. We get a drier period out in much of the western United States, maybe some scattered showers in the plains. You got another system coming into the Pacific Northwest as well. As we get into the overnight hours, you can see how everything progresses to the east now, getting into parts of the western parts of the mid-Atlantic states. And through the day on Friday, that low is going to continue into the mid-Atlantic, so look for some heavy rain along the eastern seaboard there. As we take a look at that estimated rainfall, it's been a lot, especially around that low pressure system along the Gulf Coast states. We're going to see a lot more rain as we add the next 24 hours on there. Check this out. Wow, right all along the Gulf Coast states, we're looking at very heavy rainfall potential. Over 3 inches of rain is what our model is estimating in some of these areas. All right, as far as temperatures go, that's where we really see the warmth, the 70s and 80s there. It's a little cooler, but not cold, certainly by any stretch of the imagination, even as you get up into the northern plains. Heading into the overnight hours we go, and we'll see milder overnight low temperatures in the 30s and 40s, 50s and 60s. They're still really mild as you get closer to 70 in the far southeast, and we'll cool it down a little bit immediately behind that front as we get into tomorrow. Quick check of the jet stream. There's that trough that's coming through. That'll be moving into the eastern areas and into the northeast as we get over the weekend. Things do warm up for a lot of the country as we get into the next week. We will have a weaker trough though coming in the middle of the week, but overall we're looking at some warmer air across much of the country. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Crowheart, Wyoming, sunny and warmer for you today with a high of 61 degrees. Valley Falls, Kansas, partly cloudy, a breezy day with a high around 60 degrees. And Brooksville, Mississippi, thunderstorms likely with a high of 76.
The Ag Census puts the number of cow operations into perspective, what it means for the industry. That's coming up next. And later, the power of table scraps, how this Australian community is lighting the future of recycling in the country.
Drover's Report is sponsored by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont, your partner in range and pasture productivity.
From our partners at Drover's, according to the latest Census of Agriculture, the number of U.S. beef cow operations is up since 2012. The latest count puts beef cow operations at 729,000. Now, the slight increase in beef operations is a shift in trends that have seen falling numbers over the past 20 years. Since the 1997 census, the number of cow operations has fallen by 170,000
producers. Among the largest beef cow operations, the census counted 5,938 operations with more than 500 cows, representing 5.47 million cows, or 17% of the nation's total. The number of operations in the 500-plus cow category was up 430 operations from the 2012 census. With more than 500 cows had an average herd size of 921 cows.
The number of America's largest cattle feedlots has gradually increased. The 2017 census found 700 operations with 2,500 head or more on feed, combining for 10.6 million head, or 71% of the total on feed. Now, according to the survey, there were 31.7 million beef cows in 2017 with an average herd size of 43 cows. When we come back, food waste is a global problem. We'll see how towns in Australia are using leftovers to power their homes in the country.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
In the Country is powered by Kawasaki. Let the good times roll.
Washington leaders are spending time this April focusing on reducing food waste. Just a few days ago, the USDA, EPA, and FDA announcing plans to address the issue. Heads of each agency sitting down at the EPA headquarters to discuss a new group strategy. Now, in the U.S., more than 1/3 of all available food goes uneaten through loss or waste. Food is the single largest type of waste in our daily trash. The administration joining other corporate and business leaders who have made a public commitment to reduce food loss and waste in their operations by 50% by the year 2030.
Keeping excess food out of landfills not only helps the environment, but it can also be used to feed people, animals, or create energy. And keeping food out of landfills also creates jobs. We estimate that roughly 50,000 jobs are supported by food reuse, recycling, and recovering operations in the United States.
Now, the plan includes 6 key action areas, including increasing communications around food safety and food labeling. But this is a global problem, and one public entity in Australia is focusing on finding a use for the food that does end up in the trash. From the outside, it looks like any other waste facility, but inside, trucks are dropping off another delivery of food scraps.
What we're basically doing here is converting food waste to renewable energy using the gas that's produced when you starve the waste of oxygen. So it just works exactly like a stomach.
In this artificial digestive system located in North Melbourne, food is chewed up and turned into a brown liquefied pulp.
We start to feed the digested material through the array of pipeworks here, and that pumps it out into our main digester tanks. And at that point there, that's when the biology starts to eat into the material, which produces the biogas that we use.
The plant can process 33,000 tons of waste a year, creating enough energy to power nearly 750,000 homes.
In Victoria, we're producing over 2 million tonne of food waste per annum. So there's a hell of a lot more to be that can be used.
It's one approach to a global problem that leaders hope can create new benefits from a sizable burden.
Waste to energy cannot be something that incentivises or encourages the creation of more waste. It cannot undermine focus on developing up a very strong recycling sector.
As it sorts out the options, turning food waste into fuel stands as one possible solution to a mountain of problems. Now, here at home, EPA has provided grants to help build some anaerobic digesters. It's hoping to do more. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.